Storms, floods, drought. Climate change has many faces. What few people realize, however, is that the effects of climate change long since reached our supermarkets too. Because many foodstuffs come from far-off countries where drought and freak weather destroy entire harvests.
In the past, we used to produce really good coffee here, but not anymore because of climate change.
When farmers worldwide are plagued by crop failure, that also impacts on us. So what does climate change mean with regard to our food? Will our eating habits change?
The effects of climate change are so powerful that prices will definitely rise and quality drop.
Hamburg is the biggest transshipment center in Europe for coffee. It is home to many small roasting houses which process the beans as soon as they arrive in port. Germany imports 18 million sacks of coffee a year. On average, every German drinks half a liter of this pick-me-up each day. Bahadir Özdoğan is a coffee expert. He always supervises the roasting of his beans personally.
To be honest, I'm always nervous about every new delivery we get. What sort of quality can I expect in the cup? Have we done our job properly? Has the coffee been roasted perfectly? It's not a surprise anymore, but it is exciting time and again to discover how much complexity there is in a coffee.
Many different factors give coffee its aroma. In addition to the roasting, origin and cultivation also play a role. And not least, the beans need a stable climate. Importer Philipp von der Goltz regularly visits coffee farmers all over the globe. They tell him about their experiences and their problems.
What used to be a distinct rainy period in the past is now simply broken up over the year. Or it doesn't rain at all. So, of course, neither the farmer nor the plant can adjust to this. It has a definite effect on production, on productivity, on how the farmer can work.
Colombia is one of the world's leading coffee-growing countries. It exports 500,000 tons of coffee a year. Scientists at the International Agricultural Research Center in Cali, in western Colombia, are studying the effects climate change is having already. It involves German agricultural economist Christian Bunn, traveling widely to pay regular visits to coffee farmers throughout the region. At the moment, it's harvest time, the perfect opportunity to find out what problems the farmers are facing. Bunn is now heading 400 kilometers into the Colombian highlands in the southwest of the country.
We're now going to visit farmers in the Nariño region, near Pasto. We want to see what is being done at various altitudes to adapt to climate change. The rising temperatures are causing defects. Beans are not growing to full maturity and dropping off. Diseases are occurring.
In Colombia, coffee is grown at various altitudes. Depending on the location, farmers are confronted with different problems. Today, Christian Bunn is driving up to an altitude of 2,100 meters to the coffee plantation run by José Delgado. Delgado, who has been growing coffee for many years, is one of thousands of small farmers whose livelihood depends entirely on coffee. And now he knows from this year's harvest that it has been a bad year once again. Delgado tells Bunn that things don't look good. As with all the other farmers in the region, the plants on José Delgado's farm have suffered from the increasing heat and continuing drought. Whole bushes have withered.
In the past, we used to produce really good coffee here, but not anymore because of climate change. The plants get far too little rain. And then there's the heat. The beans shrivel. The bottom line is that the quality of our harvest is getting steadily worse.
To develop fully, a coffee cherry needs a regular supply of water. But wet and dry periods no longer occur in their customary rhythm. So even experienced farmers like José Delgado are struggling.
They really know what they're doing. Sometimes that gets ignored. People think, oh yes, those small farmers, a bit more education, better training, that's the answer. No, they really do know what they're doing. But that's not working anymore. The main problem is that the weather rhythm has changed, so their old farming rules no longer apply.
José Delgado planted his coffee bushes himself 25 years ago. The plan was to set up a family business. But 3 of his 4 sons have moved into town. Only the 4th son, Dyson, is still here.
If my father stays on the farm, I will help him. But I hope we'll be able to improve our harvesting techniques in order to increase production in the long term. We ought to invest in an irrigation system in order to avoid losing so many plants in summer.
But the Delgados don't have the money. So instead, they planted bananas to provide shade for the coffee plants. José Delgado has no idea how much longer they can keep going.
In order to support my family, I had to leave the farm. We couldn't even afford to pay our harvest helpers. We had to take out a loan. Last year, I went to Ecuador for 3 months to earn money in another job. It was the only way I could clear my debts at the bank.
This year, things are particularly bad. The family will harvest no more than a ton of coffee beans for an income of no more than 2,000 euros. That's far too little to survive on. Christian Bunn knows that most other farmers in the region are in a similar position. Unless prices rise considerably in the near future, many small farmers will have to give up, because climate change is also affecting the quality of their coffee.
This is today's yield. The beans come from those plants that were particularly well cared for, with shade and a little irrigation. And these are beans which were harvested previously. They won't shrink anymore. They'll be dried, but they won't shrink. This is a lovely bean. It has the high quality we want, but these beans here have suffered greatly from the heat. They're not fully developed and won't taste good.
But it's not only farmers in Colombia who are being affected by the consequences of climate change. Researchers agree that, in the long run, the world's other great coffee-growing nations, Brazil, Vietnam, Tanzania and Ethiopia, will also be hit, and their problems will also be felt by us.
Climate change is having such an impact on coffee cultivation that we will most certainly have to contend with higher prices and a drop in quality. Even farms at great altitude here are feeling the effects of climate change in the form of inferior quality. Costs are increasing, and farmers will only be able to continue working if prices are high.
Higher prices, poorer quality, and coffee is no isolated case. Economist Thilo Pommerening has examined various popular products for the WWF Environmental Organization. He has found that we are already experiencing the consequences of climate change in the supermarket.
Many people here in Germany think that climate change refers to hurricanes in America or to island states threatened by a rise in the sea level. But to an increasing extent, here in Germany too, we are feeling that indirectly through agricultural products that can be affected by extreme weather in the form of crop failure. We notice quite clearly that every so often certain products are no longer available, or there's a difference in quality, or they cost more.
In the producer countries, some of these foodstuffs are among the most important export commodities. Pommerening found that bananas, the world's most cultivated fruit, are also seriously affected by the consequences of climate change.
Climate science assumes that in the future, the heavy rainfall in those areas of Colombia where bananas are grown will become even heavier. Some estimates forecast that by 2060, because of climate change, Colombia will lose roughly 60% of the area on which bananas are grown today.
Oranges are grown mainly in the United States, Mexico, Brazil and Iran. But the harvest is threatened by drought. Half the orange juice consumed worldwide comes from Brazil, mainly from the region around Sao Paulo. Today, orange trees there require intensive irrigation, something that wasn't necessary in the 60s and 70s. 22 liters of water are now required to produce just 1 liter of orange juice. Production is becoming more complex and thus more expensive. Hazelnuts come from the United States, Italy, and primarily from Turkey, which dominates the world market with a share of more than 70%. Crop failure is already resulting in supermarkets in Germany occasionally having no hazelnuts at all in their range. Within a short space of time, the price on the world market soared from 6 to 12.50 euros per kilo. Experts reckon that in the future too, Turkey will have to cope with massive crop losses. But it's not only individual products that are affected. WWF official Thilo Pommerening warns of the effects if emissions of greenhouse gases are not drastically reduced.
It makes a huge difference whether global warming stands at 1.5 degrees or between 3 and 5 degrees. In the latter case, far more regions will be affected and far more agricultural products. Even basic foodstuffs could be affected.
The consequences of global warming can already be experienced in Colombia. Christian Bunn is continuing his tour through the uplands. He's accompanied by agricultural engineer Tania Ordóñez. An agricultural engineer, she knows the local coffee farmers and is heading a project designed to help them adapt to climate change.
Coffee production in the region has dropped by 50%. As a result, farming families have far less money coming in. Yet, coffee production is their livelihood. My father, too, is a coffee farmer. I hope that through Christian Bunn's climate model, we can learn how to cope with future climate change.
With the help of his models, Bunn makes climate forecasts for the future. But he doesn't rely solely on his computer calculations.
It's important to go out into the field time and again to talk to those affected and find out whether our models really do relate to reality.
For people here, it is a question of survival. After all, a coffee plant has to produce yields over a long period.
Coffee and cocoa farmers here already have to ask themselves what things will be like in 30 years' time, because everything we plant now will still be there.
One thing is certain. The lower an area of cultivation lies, the more difficult the situation will prove. Christian Bunn has come to visit Fernando Pinto. His fields are 600 meters lower down from those of José Delgado. Is he happy with his harvest?
Well, you know yourself how much of a problem climate change is for us.
Pinto is showing the researchers his fields. The plants are infested with a fungus. Coffee rust is now regarded as the biggest threat to coffee production worldwide.
You can see the yellow patches with yellow powder on the leaves. The plant loses all the leaves on a branch, and with them, of course, enormous productivity. Even though the plant might recover, it will never produce as much as it did before. Rust has become so widespread throughout Latin America that it has caused crop failure on a huge scale. Entire regions have been lost. In some instances, the only solution is to cut everything down, burn it, and then start again from scratch.
Rising temperatures as a result of climate change favor the spread of the dreaded fungus. Fernando Pinto has been hard hit. Of his original 15,000 coffee bushes, only a third have survived. He grew up on this farm. Coffee is his life.
My father grew coffee. This place means so much to me. I like coffee. I enjoy drinking it, and I've always liked growing it. And I love living in the countryside. But for some time now, I've been thinking about moving into town because things just aren't working out here anymore. Life on the land has become much too tough.
Just as it is for 500,000 other farmers in Colombia, coffee is Pinto's main source of income. He has to feed his wife and 4 children from it. The consequences of climate change already threaten the livelihood of small farmers throughout Latin America.
If I notice during the harvest that yields are poor, I can't just go away and work somewhere else. Then everything here would be lost. I have to stay with my family and hope for better times. My sons have given it a try here and helped me in the field, but now they want to leave. Lots of work for little reward is driving our young men into the cities.
It's clear to Christian Bunn that the problems confronting farmers in Colombia will also affect those in other countries.
Coffee farmers in Colombia are really well trained, and if this country doesn't manage to cope with the problems and adapt to climate change, then I don't know who could.
A test field in southern Germany. Researchers are convinced that greenhouse gases and climate change will affect agriculture in Germany too. Here, scientists have planted wheat. Plant ecologist Andreas Fangmeier from Hohenheim University near Stuttgart has been testing different varieties for several years.
When do plants start to blossom? When do they mature? And when does autumn begin biologically? Over 50 years, we've analysed data from more than 100 measuring stations in Baden-Württemberg, and there is no doubt that climate change is with us.
This wheat is being grown under special conditions. Carbon dioxide flows constantly out of thin pipes. This is how researchers simulate what the outside air will probably be like in 2050. The result is reassuring. The CO2 has a massive influence on plant growth and development.
Water utilisation efficiency, the water needed to produce a certain volume of biomass, improves with CO2, but the quality, in the form of a high protein content, is poorer. We first need to understand why this is and what can be done about it. But at least we do know that carbon dioxide has a negative effect on the constituents of the wheat. They deteriorate. The yield is higher, but the quality poorer.
If CO2 concentrations are increased to the values expected for 2050, yields rise by around 10%. At the same time, however, the protein content of the cereal drops. Gluten proteins are needed for baking or for making noodles. But through the increased influence of CO2, these are lost.
Unless there is further development, in a worst-case scenario, varieties which are already of poor quality will become so bad that they will no longer be able to fulfill their original purpose. Bread will be difficult to bake, or substances will need to be added to make bread or noodles.
But it's not only about the tackiness of dough. Fangmeier's colleague Petra Högi suspects that other valuable constituents could also be lost. She tests varieties of cereal in special climatic chambers. Here too, increased temperatures and CO2 values simulate the year 2050.
We know from previous experiments that iron and zinc are particularly susceptible. So people in developing countries who have a cereal-based diet will face negative effects in the future. Therefore, we are screening varieties of cereal to try and find those that will have high iron and zinc values in the future too.
So in the years ahead, even staple foods will change. Scientists are already thinking about how to react to these challenges. One thing is clear, carrying on as before is out of the question. Consequently, the focus is again on genetic engineering.
We need adaptation measures to guarantee foodstuffs in the quality we want, so we will probably have to utilize every technical possibility at our disposal, whether we're talking about old generation genetic engineering or more recent technologies. I cannot predict how well this will go down with people in general.
Back to Colombia. Here too, coffee farmers already have to plan for 2050. In the uplands, Christian Bunn has come to see Eduard Cabrera. Coffee has been grown on his farm for 2 generations. But like many small farmers in Colombia, Cabrera is looking for alternatives. In addition to running his plantation, he now breeds pigs. In the past, there was nothing more lucrative than the coffee trade. But now meat production is becoming more and more important. Besides pigs, Eduard Cabrera also breeds guinea pigs, which in some parts of the country are regarded as a delicacy.
I sell guinea pigs to earn some extra money. For years now, coffee has no longer been sufficient as the main source of income, at least not the way we imagine it. We try to compensate our losses a bit by breeding animals.
Like so many plants elsewhere, Cabrera's coffee bushes have suffered from the rising temperatures, which pests find particularly favorable.
This is the coffee borer. It feels at home inside a bean and lays 20 to 30 eggs. At high temperatures, the coffee borer reproduces prodigiously. As a result, it is now appearing in regions where it never used to be seen. The high temperatures are clearly linked to climate change because they're just not normal for this region.
Eduard Cabrera runs his farm together with his mother. His wife and his children long since sought better jobs in town. The Cabreras have grown Arabica coffee here for decades. Arabica is a popular bean, but one that is highly susceptible. Cabrera is thinking about switching to another variety. Robusta is more resistant to parasites and high temperatures.
But Robusta has incredibly poor drinking quality. It doesn't taste nice. Cultivation is only worthwhile for farmers if the quantities are extremely high. And Robusta could hardly be grown economically here. Prices are so low because of the poor quality. Cultivation would only be worthwhile if it took place on a highly industrialized, low-wage level.
The Arabica bean is under stress caused by fungi, pests and heat. It's extremely doubtful whether coffee will stay tasty and reasonably priced. But coffee is only one product amongst many. What is clear is that climate change is going to exacerbate the food situation worldwide. Agricultural economist Martin Keim has been studying this problem for several years. He has been analyzing what it will mean if the earth has to support more and more people, with harvest yields constantly diminishing.
As we can see from this chart, climate change will have very diverse regional effects. Green indicates where the average yields of staple foods, in particular grain, could even be increased. However, the dominant color is red, and the red areas on this chart have to contend with harvest losses due to climate change. Unfortunately, those are the very regions in Africa, Asia, and Latin America which are already suffering from famine and poverty.
Afrika, Asien, Lateinamerika, die heute schon von Hunger und Armut besonders betroffen sind.
Even today, some 800 million people on our planet do not have enough to eat. And Martin Keim estimates that by 2050, this figure will rise to 1.2 billion. There is, he believes, only one solution.
Sustainability means utilizing existing resources efficiently, but also economically. This means that we will also have to change our consumption behavior. We will have to shop more consciously, consume more consciously. This will undoubtedly mean reducing the amount of meat we eat. But not only that, we will also have to reconsider our mobility. A lot of other things will need a rethink too. We will all have to take a good look at ourselves and try to be more aware of how we use our limited resources.
We are used to going into our local supermarket and finding top quality goods from all over the world on sale at reasonable prices. It is clear already that this won't always be the case. Many products are showing the initial effects of climate change even today. Take cocoa, for instance, which is grown mainly in Papua New Guinea, Indonesia, the Ivory Coast and Ghana. Ghana lives from cocoa production, but last year alone, yields fell by 30%. Here too, the main reason is a change in the rainfall. Experts even fear that in the long run, cocoa farming will have no future in Ghana. So the price of chocolate will probably rise considerably. It's a similar situation with rice, which is grown mainly in China, India, Indonesia, and Bangladesh. Chinese researchers expect climate change to result in extreme weather and drought, with mainly the north of the country being affected. They fear that the rice harvest could shrink by as much as 37%. This estimate is based on temperatures rising by a maximum of 2.1 degrees Celsius.
It is certain that weather extremes will increase and that temperatures will change, resulting in crop damage in various regions of the world and in diverse products being affected. The degree of impact, however, will depend on how quickly we succeed in implementing the Paris Climate Change Agreement and keeping global warming clearly below 2 degrees.
What we eat and what we pay for it will change in the years ahead. But just how dramatic these changes will be depends not least on us.